guys, it's Miss Slobodian here again with another reading of Wonder by R.J Palacio. This is my fourth video, so make sure if you are here you have watched the other three so you're not confused. Just to do a little recap of the last video, Augie went to do a tour of the school and he met three students, Charlotte, Jack Will, and Julian, and he was treated pretty poorly by Julian. I think he was asked if his face or if he had been in a fire and what was up with his face. So he was kind of made fun of by Julian, but he still insisted on wanting to go to school. So that's kind of what happened in the last video. And today we are going to start on page 35 with the chapter First Day Jitters. Okay, so I admit that the first day of school, I was nervous. I was so nervous that the butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around my insides. Mom and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they acted all excited for me, taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house, since it was Via's first day of school too. Until a few days before, we still weren't sure I was going to school after all. After the tour of the school, Mom and Dad had reserved sides on whether I should go or not. Mom was now the one saying I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying I should. Dad had told me he was really proud of how I handled myself with Julian, and that I was turning into quite the strong man. And I heard him tell Mom that he now thought she had been right all along. But Mom, I could tell, wasn't so sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Via wanted to walk me to school today, since it was on the way to the subway station, Mom seemed relieved that we were all going to be together. I guess I was too. Even though Beecher Prep is just a few blocks from our house, it had only been on the block a couple of times before. In general, I try to avoid blocks where there are lots of kids roaming around. On our block, everyone knows me, and I know everyone. I know every brick and every tree trunk and every crack in the sidewalk. I know Mrs. Grimaldi, the lady who's always sitting in our window, and the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mom gets our bagels, and the waitress at the coffee shop, who all call me honey and give me lollipops whenever they see me. I love my neighborhood at North River Heights, which is why it was so strange to be walking down these blocks feeling like it was all new to me suddenly. Amesfort Avenue, a street I've been down a million times, looked totally different for some reason. Full of people I never saw before, waiting for buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amesfort and headed up River Heights Place. Via walked next to me like she usually does, and Mom and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school, hundreds of them talking to each other in little groups, laughing or standing with their parents who were talking to other parents. I kept my head way down. Everyone's just as nervous as you are, said Via in my ear. Just remember that is everyone's first day of school too, okay? Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far nothing bad happened. I didn't catch anyone staring or even noticing me. Only once did I look up to see some girls looking my way and whispering with their hands cupped over their mouths, but they looked away right when they saw me notice them. We reached for the entrance. Okay, so that's it, big boy, said Dad, putting his hands on top of my shoulders. Have a great first day. I love you, said Via, giving me a big hug. You too, I said. I love you, Augie, said Dad, hugging me. Bye. Then Mom hugged me, but I could tell she was about to cry, which would have totally embarrassed me, so I gave her a fast hug, turned, and disappeared into the school. Now we're on the chapter Locks. So my question for this previous chapter is, why do you think Augie's mom suddenly changed her mind and doesn't want him to go to school anymore? She seemed so insistent on it at the beginning, and then she switched, and then his dad actually wanted him to go. So why do you think there was that switch? Okay. And then Locks is the next chapter, and it is on page 37. I went straight to room 301 on the 3rd floor. Now I was glad that I had gone on that little tour because I knew exactly where to go and I didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids started sitting at different desks. The desks were in a half circle facing the chalkboard, so I chose a desk in the middle toward the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head down, just looking up enough under my bangs to see everyone's feet. As the desks started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat down next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. "Hey, August!" It was Charlotte, giving me a little wave, and she sat down in the front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit up in the front of the class, I don't know. "Hey," I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack. "What's up?" he said, nodding at me. "Hey, Jack," I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wished I hadn't done because I felt uncool. "Okay, kids, okay, everyone, settle down," said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Miss Petosa, on the chalkboard. "Everyone find a seat, please. Come in," she said to a couple of kids who had just walked in the room. "There's a seat there and right there." She hadn't noticed me yet. "Now the first thing I want to do is stop talking," and she noticed me. "And put your backpacks down and quiet down." She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. "I'm going to take attendance and do a seating chart," she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. "When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you to. Your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some lockers are not right outside this class but down the hall. And before anyone can think of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you cannot switch locks. If there is any time at the end of this period, we're all going to go get to know each other a little bit better. Okay? Okay." She picked up the clipboard and on her desk and started reading the names out loud. "Okay, so Julian Abbins," she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said "here" at the same time. "Hi, Julian," she said, making a note on her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it to him forward. "Come pick it up," she said, kind of no nonsense. He got up and took it from her. "Xmena Chin." She handed a folder to each kid as she read off the names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk just a few seats away. When he called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who was looking already like a teenager, she said, "Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay?" She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor and came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the right seat of the desk, so it was kind of like a wall between his desk and mine. "Maya Markovitz," Miss Petosa was saying. "Here," said a girl about 4 desks down from me. "Miles Norrie." "Here," said the kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to the desk, I saw him shoot Henry a "poor you" look. "August Pullman," said Miss Petosa. "Here," I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. "Hi, August," she said, smiling at me very nicely when I went up to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into my back for the few seconds I stood in the front of the class. And everyone looked down, and I walked back from my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyway, because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock but couldn't do it. He was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. Miss Petosa called out a few more names. The last was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, "Okay, so everyone write your combinations down somewhere safe that you won't forget, okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3 or 2 times a semester, or 3.2 times a semester," Miss Garcia had a list of all the combination numbers. "Now go ahead, take your locks out of your folders and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you went ahead and did that anyway." She was looking at Henry when she said that. "And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. And then you guys can tell me something about yourselves and we'll get to know each other. Sound good?" "Good." She smiled at everyone, though I felt that she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Miss Garcia's smile, but a normal smile, like she meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were to look like. I guess I thought she'd look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on top of her head, but in fact she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 6. Haircut kind of like a boy's and a big white shirt like that of a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock open. And when he was getting more and more frustrated, every time someone else popped one open, he got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put the backpack between us, I would most definitely have offered to help him. Okay, so what does it mean in this chapter when he said Miss Petosa or Miss P gave him a real smile? What does that mean in comparison to a shiny smile that Miss Garcia gave him? You could think about it to yourself or comment down below what you think that means. The next chapter is called Around the Room, and it starts on page 41. Miss Petosa told us a little bit about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from and how she always wanted to teach and how she left her job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream to teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hand. "Yes," she said, and looked at the list to remember his name. "Julian. That's cool about how you're pursuing your dream," he said. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he smiled proudly. "Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Julian?" "Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you." "Actually, wait a minute. How many of you have come from Beecher Lower School?" About half of the kids raised their hands. "Okay, so a few of you already know each other, but the rest of you, I guess, are new to the school, right? Okay, so everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things that they don't already know about you. Okay? Okay. So let's start with Julian and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. "Okay, whenever you're ready," Miss Petosa said. "Okay, so number 1 is that..." "Do me a favor and start with your names, okay?" Miss Petosa interrupted. "It'll help everyone remember." Okay, so my name is Julian, and the number 1 thing I like to tell everyone about myself is that I got Battleground Mystic for my wheat, and it's totally awesome. And the number 2 thing is that we got a ping pong table this summer. "Very nice, I love ping pong," said Miss Petosa. "Does anyone have any questions for Julian?" "Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or 1 player?" said the kid named Miles. "Not those kind of questions, guys," said Miss Petosa. "Okay, so how about you?" She pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was the closest to the front. "Oh, sure." Charlotte didn't hesitate for a second, like she knew exactly what she wanted to say. "My name is Charlotte. I have 2 sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Suki in July. We got her from an animal shelter, and she is so cute." "That's great, Charlotte. Thank you," said Miss Petosa. "Okay, then who's next?" So that was that chapter there. And now we are going on to the chapter called Lamb to the Slaughter on page 43. Like a lamb to the slaughter. Something that you say about someone who goes somewhere calmly, not knowing that something unpleasant is going to happen to them. That's the quote for Lamb to the Slaughter. I Googled it last night. That's what I was thinking when Miss Petosa called my name, and suddenly it was my turn to talk. "My name is August," I said. And yeah, I kind of mumbled it. "What?" said somebody. "Can you speak up, honey?" said Miss Petosa. "My name is August," I said louder, forcing myself to look up. I have a sister named Via and a dog named Daisy, and that's it. Wonderful, said Miss Petosa. Anyone have any questions for August? No one said anything. Okay, you're next, said Miss Petosa to Jack. Wait, I have a question for you, August, said Julian, raising his hand. Why do you have that tiny braid in the back of your hair? Is that like a Padawan thing? Yeah, I shrugged, nodded. What's a Padawan thing? Said Miss Petosa, smiling at me. It's from Star Wars, answered Julian. A Padawan is a Jedi appearance. Oh, interesting, answered Miss Petosa, looking at me. So you are into Star Wars, August? I guess. I nodded, not looking up because I really just wanted to slide under my desk. Who's your favorite character? Julian asked. I started thinking maybe he wasn't too bad. Jango Fett. What about Darth Sidious? He said, do you like him? Okay, guys, you can talk about Star Wars stuff at recess, said Miss Petosa cheerfully. But let's keep going. We haven't heard from you yet, she said to Jack. Now it was Jack's turn to talk, but I admit I didn't hear a word he said. Maybe no one got the Darth Sidious thing, and maybe Julian didn't mean it after all. But in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Darth Sidious' face gets burned by Sith lightning and becomes totally deformed. His skin gets all shriveled up and his whole face just kind of melts. I peeked at Julian and he was looking at me. Yeah, he knew what he was saying. Okay. Yeah, so they mentioned lamb to the slaughter again in this chapter, like they did in an earlier chapter, which kind of means that, you know, it's something you go in not knowing something bad's gonna happen and something bad happens. So he kind of talked about his first day in class as a lamb to the slaughter. He kind of knew that there was something bad that was gonna happen, and I guess that Darth Sidious joke that Julian made was that. Yeah, so I'm gonna read one more chapter. I'm gonna read one more chapter, and it is called Choose Kind, and it starts on page 45. There was a lot of shuffling around when the bell rang and everyone got up to leave. I checked my schedule and it said my next class was English, room 321. I didn't stop to see if anyone else from my homeroom was going my way. I just zoomed out of the class and down the hall and sat down as far as the front as possible. The teacher, a really tall man with a yellow beard, was writing on the chalkboard. Kids came in laughing and talking in little groups, but I didn't look up. Basically, the same thing happened in my homeroom happened again. No one sat next to me except for Jack, who was joking around with some kids who weren't in our homeroom. I could tell Jack was the kind of kid others liked. He had a lot of friends. He made people laugh. When the second bell rang, everyone got quiet and the teacher turned around and faced us. He said his name was Mr. Brown. And then he started talking about what we would be doing this semester. At a certain point, somewhere between A Wrinkle in Time and Shen of the Sea, he noticed me, but he kept right on talking. I was mostly doodling in my notebook while he talked, but every once in a while I would sneak a look at the other students. Charlotte was in this class. So were Julian and Henry. Miles wasn't. Mr. Brown had written on the chalkboard in big block letters, precept. Okay, everyone, write this down in the very top of your first page of your English notebook. As we did what he told us to do. Okay, who can tell me what a precept is? Does anyone know? No one raised their hands. Mr. Brown smiled, nodded, and turned around to write on the chalkboard again. Precepts equal rules about really important things. Like a motto, someone called out. Like a motto, said Mr. Brown, nodding as he continued, writing on the board. Like a famous quote, like a line from a fortune cookie. Any saying or ground rule that can motivate you. Basically, a precept is anything that helps guide us when making decisions about really important things. He wrote all that on the chalkboard and then turned around to face us. So what are some really important things, he asked us. A few kids raised their hand and he pointed at them. They gave their answers, which he wrote on the chalkboard in really, really sloppy handwriting. Rules, schoolwork, homework. What else? He said as he wrote, not even turning around. Just call things out. He wrote everything everyone called out. Family, parents, pets. One girl called out the environment. So he wrote the environment. On the chalkboard, he added our world. Sharks, because they eat dead things in the ocean, said one of the boys, a kid named Reed. And Mr. Brown wrote down sharks. Bees, seatbelts, recycling, friends. Okay, said Mr. Brown, writing all these things down. He turned around, and when he finished writing, to face us again, but no one's named the most important thing of all. We looked at him, out of ideas. God, said one kid, and I could tell that even though Mr. Brown wrote God down, that wasn't the right answer he was looking for. Without saying anything else, he wrote down who we are. Who we are, he said, underlining each word as he said it. Who we are, us, right? What kind of people are we? What kind of person are you? Isn't that the most important thing of all? Isn't that the kind of question we should be asking ourselves all the time? What kind of person am I? Did anyone happen to notice the plaque next to the door of the school? Anyone read what it says? Anyone? He looked around, but no one knew the answer. It says, know thyself, he said, smiling and nodding. And learning who you are is what you're here to do. I thought we were here to learn English, Jack cracked, which made everyone laugh. Oh yeah, and that too, Mr. Brown answered, which I thought was very cool of him. He turned around and wrote in huge block letters that spread across the whole chalkboard, Mr. Brown's September precept. When given the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind. So that is his precept. Okay, so everyone, he said, facing us again, I want you to start a brand new section in your notebooks and call it Mr. Brown's precept. He kept talking as we did that, as he was telling us to do. Put today's date at the top of the first page. And now, and from then on, at the beginning of every month, I'm going to write a new Mr. Brown precept on the chalkboard, and you're going to write it down in your notebook. Then we're going to discuss what that precept means and what it is. And by the end of the month, you're going to write an essay about it, about what it means to you. So by the end of the year, you'll have your own list of precepts to take away with you. Over the summer, I ask all my students to come up with their very own personal precept. Write it on a postcard and mail it to me whenever you go on your summer vacation. People really do that, said one girl whose name I didn't know. Oh yeah, he answered. People really do that. I've had students send me precepts year after year until after they've graduated from the school. Actually, it's pretty amazing. He paused and stroked his beard. But anyway, next summer seems like a long way off. I know, he joked, which made us laugh. So everyone relax a bit while I take attendance. And when we're finished with that, I'll start telling you all about the fun stuff we're going to be doing this year in English. He pointed to Jack when he said this, which was also funny, so we all laughed at that. As I wrote it down, Mr. Brown's precept, I suddenly realized that I was going to like school, no matter what. That is the end of that chapter. So why did Augie realize he was going to like school after reading Mr. Brown's precept? I will read his precept one more time, just in case you forgot. When given the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind. So how does that relate to Augie and his experience in school so far? Now, a little activity, if you would like to do, it's totally up to you. You don't have to. You can do it at home. You can do it in your journals. You can do it in the comment section on this video. It's totally up to you. Write your own precept. So it could be something about what's going on in the world right now with the COVID-19 virus. It could be anything you want, something you believe, something you stand by, your motto. It can be anything you want. That's my little challenge to you. You don't have to do it, but if you want to do it, that would be great. I hope you're liking the book so far. I think it is really good. I'm really getting into it, and I hope you are too. Stay safe, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.